Good morning. That was long. Hey, how are you? Happy New Year. Before I jump into this, we're getting ready to start a new series. I'm super excited about it. Just want to take a second because I didn't do this earlier. But we have so many high school students that are engaged here and in and around here, and sometimes you don't see them always on Sunday morning. But we have some families, and I just want to do a quick shout out to our SCHS high school cheer team. They took fourth place in state yesterday. It's the first time ever, I think, for that to happen. And I know the cheer coach goes here and that type of thing. But I just love when our kids succeed, and I just wanted to recommend. We've got a lot of them that hang out with us here. So how's your New Year going? Here's how mine's going. I just have a picture for you. If some of you saw it, maybe on Facebook, but here's how my New Year started. Right here. This is the guy in the truck. I don't know. So clearly, our work is not finished. We have to get this message out there. And I know some of you, it may have been one of you in the truck up there. I don't know. If it was, shame on you. No, some of you saw that on Facebook. We are going to continue. Listen, I'm okay if you drive to the speed limit. Just do it in the right lane, not in the left. It's not for you. That's the zoom lane. And if you are not zoom, you do not belong over there. If you can't afford to pay the ticket, just stay to the right. Right, Anthony? So, yeah. I know. A member of my family may or may not have had the lights flashed on by Anthony recently, but sure. Sorry. Anyway, we're going to continue to spread the word. Our mission, the harvest is full out there, people that don't know how to drive. So we're going to continue to spread the word. But that's how my New Year's going. Actually, I am super excited for the new year. I always get really, really excited this time of year. I don't know why. I don't have anything particularly. There's nothing no particular reason. I just love the thought of what could happen. I love the last year. It's just okay, check. We're going to check the box on that one, and we're going to move on. And I just love the anticipation about what is next and what could happen, what God could do, what he could do here in our church, what he could do in me, in my life, in every aspect of it. I just think about, and I don't know if you're like that, but I always enter the new year with such great hope. I saw a meme this week that said, I've already messed up this year. 2025 is my year. They've already given up on 20. Don't give up yet. There's still a lot of year left, and we still have a lot of stuff that's happening even around this place, so I'm super excited about that. And some of you are the people, I know some of you are the people in the room or maybe watching online, are some of the people that just, you order the same thing off of the menu every time you go somewhere, and I know, I see them, I know, and you're just I don't want anything new. I'm happy, I'm comfortable with what I have, I'm comfortable with what God is doing in my life right now. Don't mess it up, don't push me into the uncomfortable. But I'm telling you, that is where you live. And I'm going to challenge you to order something new off the menu and just try it out. You might like it. It may ruin your dinner. I don't know. Don't come at me if that happens. But I mentioned in my video last week from home that everybody loves a great story, don't you? You love to hear a great story. I think of Pastor Doug a lot when I think of a story because he's always got a story. There's always some kind of weird harebrained story that Pastor Doug has. And I always love a great story. And I got to thinking about last week talking about this story that could be written and what's next for us as a church, what's next for you as an individual, maybe in your relationship with Christ or your job or your family or whatever. There's going to be changes that happen this year. But I got to thinking about really what stories are. And stories, in my opinion, are just recollections of things that have happened in the past, but they have the potential to impact the present and shape the future. When you hear a story or you tell a story about something or you hear me tell a story, these stories are impactful. And I think stories are impactful because sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're not so positive, but we learn from them and we have the ability to apply them to our lives and figure out what impact does that story have on my life, and how does that push me forward into the new year? And so when you think about stories in general, I think about Jesus. He told a ton of stories. Anybody know how many stories are in the Bible? You have any idea? I don't know. You don't have to answer out loud. But I think they don't really know. I think they estimate between 600 and 800 different stories in the Bible. Can you imagine? And in fact, the Bible itself is in fact in of itself a giant story. It has there's an upper story and there's a lower story. So there's the upper story of what God is doing and has been doing from creation until now. And then there's this lower part of the story that includes me and you. And sometimes when you're in the lower story, you don't see the upper story. We don't have insight into what God may or may not be doing through the lower story of our lives and what's happening in everyday life. And so I want to talk about that. And this series is going to do that. I want to push us, to move past the past. And I know some of you are like, ooh, I hate that. But we're going to talk about that. But Jesus told a lot of stories. Some of them were true. Some of them were just illustrative. Some of them were examples that he would illustrate his point, and he would tell a lot of stories. And I think stories are cool because you connect with them, right? You can identify with a story, and you go, okay, now I get that. I know what you're coming across there. And so here's the fact. Jesus told a lot of stories, so I tell a lot of stories. Some of them are true, some of them are not. But the fact is, when you think about where we're headed and the stories in your past and the stories that are still yet to be written in your future, maybe this year, maybe this week, maybe next month, I don't know. Here's the thing. Neutral is not an option. And I don't know if you picked that up in the bumper video there, if you even read those. But neutral is not an option. Like, to sit still is not an option. Like, we have to be moving forward. And I love that part of the bumper. You can't just sit still in life, regardless of what. You can't just say, hey, I like the age I am now, and I'm going to just stay right here. I'm not going to get older. Some of you have tried that. It's not working. I'm telling you, it's not working. You can't just sit, your life is constantly moving, and we're headed in some kind of direction. So neutral is not an option. You can't just pull over and say, hey, I'm just going to stick this in neutral and be fine. You're going to be in motion. And so I was reminded of the story, and I don't know if I've told the story a lot. Farron and I were 2 years apart, and when we were younger, we did a lot of things together. And so it was before the golden child came, Chris. He wasn't born yet. And so Mom was just stuck with us. And so parenting, let me just tell you, when I grew up in like the early 70s, parenting was different than it is today. There were no rules. Like Chris, when Chris was actually born, and this is how you know he was a golden child, his assigned seat in the car, we had like a 1978 Chevy Caprice Classic, and it was as large as this room. It had a 454 in it, and it had a carburetor that was made by Hoover, and it just sucked gas. It was just this beast of a car. And Chris's assigned seat was the armrest. That's where Chris sat his entire childhood growing up. No car seat, no seat belt. He just sat on the armrest, perched up there like the golden child that he is. Just sat right there in the middle. Who does that? So parenting was different. And I remember Mom had taken Farron and I to the store one time. Went to the grocery store there, and we lived in Paducah, Kentucky. My dad pastored a church in Paducah, Kentucky. And there was a grocery store, and it sat on this hill. It was a big hill, and the parking lot swooped way down. And at the bottom of the hill was a very busy, like 4-lane freeway or what traffic there in Paducah. And so Mom said, hey, and again, parenting was different then. You just leave your kids in the car, right? Like I was like I think I may have been in kindergarten. That's just how old I was. Farron was 2 years older than me. We had a Volkswagen Bug. It was stick shift, okay? Mom pulls up right to the front of the store. She's just going to run in and grab something, come back out. She's like, you boys just sit still in the back and pay attention and don't touch anything. We touched everything. We pushed every button. We turned we pulled every knob. And there's this thing in the middle called a gear shifter. It was a stick shift. And so we were like, wonder what this does. And so it goes in neutral. I'm in the passenger seat riding shotgun. Farron and his first grade self is driving. Me and my kindergarten self are the riding shotgun, and we start rolling, baby. And he's like giving it this number, And there's all kinds of pedals down there. Like, I don't know. We don't know which one to push. Like, you push one. This is how I learned to drive. That's why I am the way I am. Anyway, I'm like, push the brake. We didn't know which one of the three were the brake. So he pushes the one on the far left. Clutch, we go faster. We're cruising. I mean, we're rolling down the hill. The cars are whipping at the bottom. We're going to just whip right out there in traffic in our little white VW Bug. And then finally, he just starts pushing pedals. And so finally, he finds the brake. And then I hit the windshield, slide down, and some little bag boy from the grocery comes out and puts it in gear for us. And my mom was not happy. But the point of the story is that you cannot just stay in neutral. You're going to go somewhere. You're going to move, and we are going to move as individuals in our walk and in our relationship with Jesus Christ. You're going somewhere. And so I want to talk about that this morning. There's something, when you think about a story like that and you look back and there's nostalgia and there's like different stories and there's things that you've witnessed. Have you ever witnessed something in your life that was just absolutely amazing and it's a story that you tell over and over, like at a party, like, oh, well, you're never going to believe this is what happened. I have a lot of those. I have a lot of those moments in my past that were just amazing. Like the time that my grandpa shot a bumblebee with a BB gun in midair. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. It just exploded. I tell that story all the time. But we can't live in that past. We can't recreate it. And so sometimes we get stuck in something that God did in our life that was amazing. And it defines us. And we get stuck there. And we want to just live there. And we want to relive those moments. And think, oh, I remember that time that God did this in my life. That was awesome. It's like he just does, it's like he does one thing only. And then we think he never wants to do anything else for us. He never wants to push us. And so I want to look at Isaiah chapter 43. And in this passage of Isaiah, God is speaking through the prophet Isaiah. And he's telling a story. It's really cool. God is actually retelling a story about something that he did in the life of the Israelites. And if you don't know the story, if you're not familiar, these Jews, Israelites, had migrated because Joseph had an amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and they went to Egypt, and they started multiplying. And then what happened was the Egyptians got nervous, and so they decided to take the Israelites captive. And they held them prisoner for 300 years. Made them make stones, they made bricks, probably built the pyramids, but that was their existence for 300 years until somebody came along named Moses. And Moses said, hey, what'd he say? Let my people go, right? So he went to the Egyptian Pharaoh and he said, hey, I'm taking all of my Israelite peeps and we're going back to Israel. We're leaving Egypt and we're going back to Israel. Pharaoh said, no, you're not. And Moses said, oh, yeah, watch this. And then all of nature freaked out, and there were all kinds of plagues, and all these things happened. And if you know the story, Pharaoh eventually lets Moses and the Israelites go. They get to the Red Sea. God parts the Red Sea. The Israelites walk across on dry land, and they get to the other side, and here comes Pharaoh and his armies chasing them, and they get into the middle of the Red Sea. God folds the Red Sea on them and wipes out, completely destroys Pharaoh and his armies. Do you know that they have actually found chariot wheels in the bottom of the Red Sea recently? Pretty cool. But that's an amazing story, right? What an incredible story. If you've been around church for 10 minutes, you've heard that story. We tell it over and over and over. That's a cool story. And so that's the story that God is telling through the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 43. Let's read it together, okay? God gives a recap. Here's what he says. I am the Lord, your Holy One, Israel's creator and king. I am the Lord who opened a way through the waters. I'm the one that did that. I parted the Red Sea. I'm the one who opened a way through the waters, making a dry path through the sea. I called forth the mighty army of Egypt with all of its chariots and all of its horses. And God just lays this story out. It's kind of brutal, but it's pretty amazing. I drew them beneath the waves, and they drowned. Their lives were snuffed out like smoldering candle wick. What an incredible story. God tells that story. He retells the story about what he did, and he's like, I'm the one that did that. Remember, that was me. I did that. And he retells this story, but the best part is the next verse. Do you know what the next verse says? Anybody? Great, I'm going to read it. I'm so excited that you don't know. Here it is. Have your Bible, Isaiah 43, chapter 43, verse 18. Here's what he says. He tells this amazing story, and then in verse 18, he says, but forget all that. Just forget it. It's nothing. That is nothing compared to what I'm going to do. It's incredible to me. What an awesome story. What an incredible story of power. I flipping parted the Red Sea, and they walked through on dry ground, and I killed them all. You think that's cool? That you ain't seen nothing yet. He says in verse 18, forget all that. That's something I did yesterday. I did that months ago. Just imagine what I can still do. Neutral is not an option. You don't get stuck in a story of the past. God is still wanting to do something. You don't get stuck in reverse. You don't. We can't get stuck in reverse. And looking back, God doesn't want us to get stuck in reverse. He could have just lived there and go, okay, just worship me now. Remember when I did that one time? Just worship me. There you go. I'm not doing anything else. But he's like, forget all that. You haven't seen anything. You've seen nothing what I can do. That's nothing compared to what I'm going to do. And we know that because we just celebrated Christmas. And he sent his son Jesus, who died on the cross and rose again. You think he's done after that? Is God done? Is he done with us? I don't think so. He doesn't want to get stuck. Farron and I, actually Chris and I once, my brother Chris, I do a lot of things with my brothers. Chris and I have dreams of being fishermen. We're terrible at it, okay? We're no Travis Gillett or John Bunnell, but we have dreams and visions, and in our minds, it always works out great. And so I remember several years ago, we decided to buy a boat, because that's what fishermen have, is they have boats. It wasn't like Travis's boat, and it's not like John's boat. It was actually a John boat, but it wasn't like John's boat. It's a John boat. And so we went to get this John boat, because we're not fancy. We don't need anything fancy. We're just like, hey, we just want to go catch some crappie, okay? That's it. So we get a John boat. It has a 10-horse Johnson motor that was made in 1725. Like it had the rope pulled off of it as soon as we pulled it. And like we had to put a new rope on it. We went and bought this John boat off this guy over by St. Louis. And we bought the thing. We were so excited. In fact, we actually asked for forgiveness later because we bought it for $700 and we thought we'd just rip the guy off. But little do we know, it was he that should have asked for forgiveness. So we bought this boat. And in our minds, there's just such full of hope and like visions of monster John Bunnell crappie that he catches at Centralia Lake, right, John? And our family would hail us as the great providers and fish fry kings. All of these visions as we're pulling this boat home. And, we actually, I will never forget our maiden voyage on this boat. We went down to Wren Lake and the bite was on and we were ready to catch some crappie. And so we got our little 10-horse Johnson motor and we fired that baby up and we're like, Here we go in a fog-filled morning. There was just a settle across the lake. It was a beautiful thing. It was something out of like Outdoor Life magazine. It was beautiful. You should have seen it. It was incredible. And we putt all the way out there. We catch no fish, and we decide to go back, and we pull it, and we go, but it didn't go. It just went. And then we heard something clunk, and what had happened, we lost forward gear. There are professional fishermen at Wren Lake. Here we come. The only gear we had, reverse. Look like absolute idiots. How y'all doing? We were stuck in reverse. We had to drive that stupid boat all the way back across Wren Lake, load it at the dock. How y'all doing? With no fish. The point is, you get stuck in reverse, you're going to look like an idiot. When you're constantly looking in the past at what God has done and you never look forward, you're stuck in reverse. God says, forget about that. And look at what I want to do. We weren't meant to go backwards. We were meant to look forward. And there is a tendency, especially in churches, to drift back to the way things were. Because it's easier. You've already been there. It's comfortable. It's harder to go forward. And we tend to remember the good, but not some of the bad that we had in the day. Everybody's like, we've all heard the phrase, hey, I wish we could just go back to the good old days, right? We've all said that, right? But I think we forget the good old days. Like, I don't know about you, but I remember my dad sending me out to trim the lawn, and it was with the hand thing. Do you remember that? Did anybody have a pair of those? Raise your hand. They were like it was like scissors. It was basically your dad sending you out with scissors to weed eat. Not the good old days I want to go back to. Remember the good old days of no air conditioning? Oh, that was good times, right? Sweat your hind end off. Good old days of outdoor bathrooms in the winter. That had to be chilly. Good old days of no such thing as antibiotics. No, I don't want that. And I think it's because there's nostalgia. And here's the definition of nostalgia. The definition of nostalgia is this. It's a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period of place with happy and personal associations. I gotta believe that some of those Israelites in the middle of wandering around in the desert for 40 years probably looked back and go, man, do you remember how happy we were standing on the other side of that river after God just folded the Red Sea in on our enemies? Man, I wish we could just go back there. But God had so much more in store for them that they didn't see. He wanted to do something else. You have to be moving forward. You know, and I think looking back is good. Looking back is a great thing to remember what God has done. I mean, God remembered what God had done. It's a good thing to remember what God has done. This passage in Isaiah, we remember what God has done. And there are people here this morning as I look around this place that remember a time when God moved at Salem Grace in a garage. And 50 people decided that they would buy 7 acres north of town at an equivalent of $2 million in today's money and make it happen, and we're all sitting in blue puffy chairs as a result of that. Because some people at some point in time had a dream about God doing something amazing. And we get to reap the benefit of that today. My question is, are we going to be the kind of people that has that same kind of gusto for what God wants to do next here? Are we going to move forward? We need these people who can we need people in our church that can say, hey, I remember, and they can tell us a story about how God was faithful. And God, when we didn't have money, there was money there. And when we didn't know when this was going to happen, but God made a way. We need people that can tell that and step into the future. We need people that tell the story that I'm the Lord, your Holy One, and the Israel. God told his own story. I absolutely love that verse 18, but forget all that. I believe God has done some amazing things, but you know what? I don't think he's done doing amazing things. I just don't. He wants to do something amazing with your life. He wants to do something amazing with your resources. He wants to do something amazing with whatever we lay at his feet, your will, your ideas. We just sang a song that says, I will make room for you to do whatever you want to with me. The question is, will we? Proverbs 4:25 says this, look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. I absolutely love the story of Salem Grace, but I'm more excited about the next chapter than I am the ones that we've already completed. God is still writing this story. He's still writing your story. He is looking for each one of us in the face. He's looking literally each one of you in the face and saying, remember the stuff I did? Yeah, forget all that. You have no idea what I have in store for you. That's next. Neutral is not an option. We can't sit still. We have to shift into drive. I hate sitting still. Like I know I have driving issues. I hate public transportation. Anybody else? Like I'm not a fan. Like I hate being out of control of my own destiny. Even flying drives me nuts because people are always trying to fit something the size of a mattress in the overhead. It's not going to fit. It just drives me wrong. But there's nothing worse than, has anybody been through Atlanta at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Anybody done that? Everybody done that on your way to Florida? Good times. Just sitting still for 4 hours is just mind-numbing to me. I can't stand it. We have to ship into drive. And so I'm like, okay, how do we do that? What do we do next, Trent? What are you asking us to do? What's the purpose of this message? Here it is. We have to start small. We have to shift into drive, into first gear, and we'll start slow. Zechariah 4:10 says this, do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. Whatever that looks like for you, I don't know what that. God rejoices when we take a step. And maybe that's in your spiritual journey. Maybe this morning you've just kind of been on the edge and you need to be engaged. And you're like, okay, I'm going to volunteer for something for once in my life, or I'm going to start a grow group. I'm going to do something. I'm just going to take a step in the direction of allowing Him to lead me and to be forward living instead of looking always in the past. And what God does. God rejoices when we take a step. It's just, it's funny. I have grandkids now, and Tatum is just, everybody tells you grandkids, what amazing. But you see him start to crawl, and we're like, woo, but now we're like, oh no. No, not the steps. He's already taken a tumble, But I just look at it, and you see him now, he's like starting to pull up, and he does this thing where he stands on his feet and his hands, but he just hasn't made but it's cool. It's like, your parents or your grandparents, when you see your kids take that first step, you're like, yeah. Woo, yeah. That is what God is doing. When He sees us take some kind of step of faith, outside of the boat, into the uncomfortable, into the scary, when we're like Peter and we're like, okay, here goes nothing. And we step out of the boat, he's like, yes. We're going to fall down? Most definitely. But with each step toward what he wants us to do and where he wants us to go, and whether that's in your finances this year or your marriage or your relationship with people who don't know Jesus, man, he wants to do something amazing. And then this time next year, we'll be going, can you believe what God did? I never saw that coming. That's the kind of year I'm looking forward to. I want us to be forward living this year. I want us to be eyes up and toward the horizon. We can look at the past and learn from it and be reminded and encouraged and strengthened by what God has already done. But I gotta believe he wants to do something else. And I tell you, our board has taken some steps that way. We're working with some people that are gonna help us do that and make this next step in our community and grow this congregation. That's the goal, is to help people find Jesus and to enter into a relationship with Jesus Christ. Last week, I talked to you online, and I'll wrap up. I talked to you online about the story of Nehemiah and what he built. And I want to read just the passage I read last week because it's so good. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 17 and 18, 2 verses. It says, then I said to them, you see, we are in the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and the gates have been burned with fire. Now, come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. We will no longer be in disgrace. And then in verse 18, I love this verse. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king has said to me. They replied, let's start rebuilding. And so they began this good work. And it was just a group of people that didn't know what in the world they were doing. And they bound together. And they did something amazing with God's help. And that is my challenge for you this week and through this series as we move into a new year. You don't have to have faith to finish. You just have to have faith to start doing something. And so I was listening to my worship this morning, and I love the song that Jeremy ended with. We want to make room for you. I want to make room for you. I want to do whatever you want me to do. That's the kind of attitude that is forward living. But there's another song I was listening to on this morning as I was driving to church, and it's called New Thing. And I want to just read the verse of it, the verse, of course, and Steve's going to play it after we get done here, and you can listen to it then while some of you stick around and help me pick up chairs. We don't have to do it right away, so we're not going to rush you out of here. Hang around and get to know some people that you don't know. That's your first step. Anyway, here's what it says. I don't want to miss it. The new thing that you're doing, the new word that you're speaking, my heart is open wide. Because if you're in this, there's nothing that is missing. Everything has meaning because heaven's open wide. I won't get it twisted. I'm standing in the midst of a miracle. You promised I won't miss it. I'm living in the days of a miracle. I love the words of that. Don't miss what God is doing because you're stuck in reverse or you're stuck in neutral. Ask him what he wants to do new in your life. Order something new off the menu this year. Yeah, you're going to, Travis. I'm going to see to it. Do it. And I promise you, you will experience God in 2024 like you have never experienced him before. And we'll experience a revival in this community and a revival in this church. I believe it. I'm with it. I want to do it with you. I think it's exciting. I want to have 4 services. I don't know. And it's not just about numbers in the room. It's about people getting to know Jesus Christ. I want to see people's lives changed in 2024. And I believe that you would do too, or you wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be tithing and faithful in what you're doing. Stay with me this morning. Father, thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for what you've already done. Thank you for reminding us of what you've already accomplished and what you've already done throughout history, how you've been faithful, how you've been exactly what we need at exactly the right time. And Father, I just pray that you would help us to lift up our heads, to look forward to what you have in store, that you would inspire us, Lord, that you would challenge us, that you would push us out of our comfort zone, Lord, that we might experience something new and not miss this new thing that you're doing for us in 2024. Help us to be focused on our forward living and to look forward to this week and what you have in store for us. Thank you for being faithful to us and reminding us of the God that you are and loving us the way that you do. Forgive us of our shortfalls, Lord, and help us to continue to strive to take the next step. In your precious holy name I pray, amen. Thank you for being here. Have a great week.